For our first session this morning, I would like to introduce to you our keynote and oral presentation moderator under session 1, Biosecurity in Aquaculture. Dr. B.A. Maren currently works as an associate professor at Borneo Marine Research Institute, University Malaysia Sabah in the field of aquaculture and marine science. He has 25 years of research experience in the field of parasites and aquaculture. Dr. Maran received several gold medals in 2019 and 2020 from UMS for his research and innovation. Recently, received medals from Malaysia Technology Expo 2021 and Special Merit Award from Croatia International Organization for his product.
Dia kalau nama dia kena main depan, main.
Dr. Maran has authored more than 75 scientific research. Please help me welcome Dr. Balu Alaga by Mati Maran.
Yeah, can you hear me? Good morning to everyone. So good morning to everyone. I'm honored to have all of you here in regards to 11th Symposium on Diseases in Asian Aquaculture virtual event. So welcome to session 1, that is Biosecurity in Aquaculture. So in this session, we have keynote speaker. It's going to be an excellent one. And we have 4 amazing oral presentations. And if you have any questions related to their presentations, you can just please post your questions in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. So for all the presentations, we have 5 minutes question and answer session. So without any further delay, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Edgar Brown. Edgar Brown is currently working as Director for Aquatic Animal Health and Welfare at the Norwegian Veterinary Institute. He has a doctor science degree from the Norwegian School of Veterinary Science and a master in epidemiology from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, Royal Veterinary College. He worked as a private fish health veterinarian in the growing salmonid industry in Norway before he started his early research career in epidemiology at the Norwegian Veterinary Institute, where he later became leader for the epidemiology section for 12 years. His interests are various aspects of aquatic animal epidemiology and health management. So with this one, I would like to please welcome Dr. Edgar to this virtual platform. You can listen his excellent presentation now. Please.
Yes, thank you very much. And good morning to everybody. Hello and good morning, everybody. My name is Edgar Brun from the Norwegian Veterinary Institute. I'm the director of the Department Aquatic Animal Health and Welfare. Before I start this presentation, I'd like to thank the committee who are giving me the opportunity to give this talk to the conference. I'm very pleased to talk about biosecurity and sustainability, which I believe is quite important topics in aquaculture. Dr. Melba has just described a little bit on biosecurity and PMP-AB, the tool that we are trying to launch through the FAO. My task is now to discuss a bit how sustainability is linked to biosecurity. Biosecurity is a pretty old term, which makes us easily to think of cleaning, washing hands, distancing, and so on. The pandemic has shown us that the importance of these basic biosecurity measures, principles that apply just as well to animals animal household as to humans. But can we understand biosecurity in a more holistic approach within aquaculture? How can biosecurity be connected to sustainability, One Health in aquaculture? In my mind, seeing biosecurity in a bigger concept will help promote and help implementing this fundamental concept to reduce the devastating spread of infectious diseases. So this is what I will try to talk about for the coming minutes. How does biosecurity connect to sustainability? In 1987, the United Nations had a Commission on Environment and Development. This, I believe, was the first time when sustainability was put on the political agenda. And in their report, Sustainable Development was to meet needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. This is a fundamental concept around sustainability. They launched what you could call 3 pillars in this development: economy, social conditions, and climate and environment. Sustainability is therefore about how we respect our environment, how we make use of our resources. We all think in these contexts, using resources not to devastate the future generations. Further, how we treat animals, how we treat people with dignity, justice, and also sustainability is about prosperity and well-being for humans. So these are the fundamental concept of sustainability. In 2016, I believe it was, UN launched goals for sustainability. We all have seen this colorful goals that sort of trying to illustrate the various development goals that we meet, that we think of within the sustainability under the concept that I was just mentioned. So how does this apply for aquaculture? If we think about 3 pillars, we see that for the society, we could talk about goal number 1, which is no poverty. Then further on, 0 hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, and gender equality. These all are connected to aquaculture, in my opinion. Further, aquaculture is about decent work and economic growth, and also about responsible consumption and production. So this goes into the economic pillar of sustainability, as I mentioned. Further on, we could see that this life below water and climate actions is also connected to the sustainable pillar of environment and climate. So aquaculture, again, for these is very integrated into the sustainability of aquaculture production. Aquaculture is a biological food production, and this is just an example from what I found in the Norwegian salmon production. If we could look at the production line, or what you could call it, you start out with eggs or smolt, you feed them, you put them in cages with lots of animals together, you have a nice production increase. This is a graph showing how production in Norway has increased through the years. And also, when you slaughter these animals, we're proud to have a high quality product that we sell to the market. So this is all about production using biological resources. And it all looks very nice and dandy. However, we know that there are disease problems. We have infectious diseases of various kinds. Some are contagious that can be spread all around the world. We know this for a lot of diseases. And we also have infectious diseases that are not spreading in that sense, but also create diseases. These diseases impact the production, reducing the efficiency of the production. Sometimes this is compensated by putting more fish into the cages. In this sense, you could say that you compensate problems by increasing the input factors. In my opinion, then, you could say again that infectious diseases becomes a major threat to a sustainable production because we are not using our resources in the best way. If we look at this in a more simplified way, you can say that you have input factors like money, labor, feed, you're using the environment, we have equipments, and of course we have animals. We put them together to produce food for humans, which you could again say is the output of the production, which in economic terms very often is said to be common goods and services. So this is the line that looks very nice and everything works nicely when things are okay. Then we know that in the production there will always be diseases, there will be mortalities, and these will obviously reduce the efficiency of the production unit. This will again reduce the output of our production. This means that the input factors we put in are actually less productive than they could be. Often we then need to increase our input factors like treatments. And as I said for the previous slide, we could also put more fish into it to compensate for this loss that diseases and the mortalities have been causing. But all this is again a negative circle that shows that we are not using our resources in a good way. So how can we deal with this? Because this is about a sustainable production. If we put in biosecurity measures, meaning that we are reducing the level of disease, the impact of diseases, then we will create output that increases accordingly. This would be the benefit of biosecurity, that actually by using biosecurity as an input factor in addition to the others, we could actually create a system that is more sustainable than without biosecurity. Investing in biosecurity, therefore, in my opinion, helps optimizing the use of resources and we gain a more sustainable production. Biosecurity is a long-term system of tailored measures supporting optimal use of input variables for a sustainable food production by reducing the occurrence and impact of infectious or contagious diseases. This is a concept that actually in that description means that we create a more sustainable production by reducing the input variables or factors and making those input factors that we actually use at the most optimum level. Diseases in aquaculture is therefore also a concern for society, not only a company's concern, because many of our input factors are of social concern. And diseases, if you're not using these in a good manner, actually affect the society input. Economy is a tool that can express how efficient we use our input resources, which often are scarce, to benefit the society and environment. This is the way to say that, not only saying that we have a disease, we have mortalities, but we could actually put economic terms on how devastating these diseases are, or you could say, how could we use these factors more optimal? This is a clip from the movie called Wall Street in 1987. In that movie, for those who have seen it, there is a guy, a broker called Gordon Gekko, which is quite cynical and has launched that greed is good. So he was out after money. Normally, you would think that he would read financial reports in order to understand companies and understand how they're doing. I went to a seminar where this Dag Sletmo, which I have noted to the left, down left, from the Norwegian Bank. And he presented this, and he said that no, not necessarily financial reports are the most interesting. Fish health reports may be more of interest because they are saying how in a longer term do the company actually work with their input variables. So he claimed that fish health, and I could also include welfare, is a key driver of profitability. That means again that fish health is a part of this sustainability, and it's becoming more and more prominent to report how fish health and fish health in a sustainable context is presented or is taken care of in the various companies, and that the financial communities follow these just as much as their financial reports. And this, he claimed, will affect share prices, and access to capital will increase. And this is important in many countries where we need to have good investment in order to increase the production. So his conclusion was that happy fish in a sustainable environment also creates happy shareholders. So again, how to keep a happy fish is to keep it healthy, and then again on using biosecurity as a preventing tool. On another slide, he presented the same in a more sort of economic terms. Every year, the Veterinary Institute produce a fish health report with the status of fish health in Norway. And mortality is one of the variables that we present. And for 2020, we see that there is a big variation in mortality along the Norwegian coast. The coast is divided into various production zones, and we see that in some zones the mortality is around 10%, and in another, which is red here, it's almost 30%. So there's a huge variability in mortality. And we all know that mortality is due to diseases, and diseases influence mortality, of course, but also a lot of other biological performance factors which affect the economy of the production. And when we look at the EBIT, earnings before interest tax, and compare that with the mortality distribution, we see that companies where you have a high mortality, again in this red area, has a much lower EBIT than companies where the mortality is lower. So we are again talking about a sustainability related to diseases, to mortality in terms of economy. And again, diseases and biosecurity and sustainability is linked. Our Prime Minister in 2021 said in relation to COVID that we were not prepared to prevent, detect, and respond to cross-border infections. A lot of things we did were related on ad hoc solutions. This is also something that we need to take care of in aquaculture. If we look at this graph, to the left, we have a low level of disease, and as we move to the right, we imagine that the disease level is increasing. And the social and the company cost are increasing. So our aim with biosecurity is to try to keep our production in this area. This is the most efficient level of using input variables like animals, but it's also the most costly way of producing, and again, the more sustainable way of producing animals. Focusing on awareness, prevention, detection, and control. The more we move to the right, the less sustainable is the production, meaning again, the more costly it will be, the more dead animals, and the less efficient use of the resources we have. So focus here on biosecurity, early detection, emergency response, and effective control is essential in order to keep us in the production area on the left corner of this graph. Some essentials in biosecurity. Biosecurity is, in my opinion, a partnership between neighbors. You cannot do biosecurity alone. It is a question connected to the industry as a whole and also for authorities. And we all have different roles, but we have complementary roles. I would like briefly just to say that biosecurity plans is now becoming a demand from the European Union connected to the new animal health law. So these are something that is obligatory in any production facilities. Surveillance is another part of biosecurity. And in this 12-point checklist, it's a simplified way of how we can run proper surveillance, how we can build surveillance system adjusted to the various situations. So this is a way to use a surveillance and connect it to improve biosecurity and again, improve this sustainability in the production. Vaccination is another part, and it's important to understand that vaccines is an important part of the biosecurity plan to achieve a sustainable production. Coming from the salmon world, we could say that almost 100% of the farmed salmon is vaccinated. However, if we look at tilapia production, only 5% of the global tilapia, farm tilapia is vaccinated, 35% in South America and only 1% in Africa. You can always discuss why, but obviously knowledge, availability, practicalities, approval, and many other issues can explain this. But to me, this is something that creates a lot of concern when it comes to having a efficient biosecurity plan, biosecurity measures in the production. This is just an old slide I had from years ago, from 2013, showing the distribution. It just tells more or less the same as the previous slide, that it is the high value fish and high industrial scale that have the most vaccinated animals. And this, even though tilapia and carp are the biggest production, we need to look into this to improve the level of vaccines in order to control the diseases or disease spread to in a better way. We have many delivering systems that is somehow causing troubles, of course, to various animals and various diseases. So this is just to show that we have all these variability within the delivery system, within the various vaccines on different diseases and different species. But we need to work a lot more in order to develop vaccines that are efficient to a greater amount of animals that we have in our cages and ponds. In the authority, I also would emphasize, because I said this is a collaboration between industry, authority, and authority has a huge responsibility in producing good regulation when it comes to aquatic animal production. They need to facilitate how the production is going on. You could only think of facilitate how the industry will act with great mortality. In many instances, the single companies cannot deal with it properly. It needs to be supported by or facilitated to handle this within the government. The industry also need to have authority coming to inspect their facilities. And it's not to see what they are doing wrong, but to see that they are working according to the regulation and to help them in order to do a better production. Because industry is there to have a role in producing fish and to earn money, and the authorities is there not to reduce that opportunity, but to see that this production is done according to good or respect for the society and the regulation that's already there. Authority also can have have a more active role when it comes to approval of, let's say, disinfections, and also for vaccines, to put an effort into increasing the availability of proper medicines, vaccines, disinfectants, and so on. So the industry actually can rely that these are efficient remedies to be used. And again, as I said, that they need to facilitate, they need to help and support contingency and to support emergency responses. If we look, just to summarize a little bit here, if we look at input variables, these can be interesting in the disease situation in a farm, but the disease situation in the farm will also affect input variables. So this is the sort of circle that is in a sustainable thinking. You have to improve that. And we see that some of these will have socioeconomic impact, some will have environmental impact. So it's this impact again, the aquaculture industry will be weighed on in relation to sustainability. But we have this in order to produce human well-being. That's why we are doing most of these activities. So the human well-being should not be too devastating on socioeconomics and environmental impact. If you have the socioeconomic impact, we produce fish in order to, if we look at the sustainable goals, reduce hunger, gender equality, and also create decent work, as I said earlier on. And for the environmental, we could put up these sustainable goals like climate actions, life below water, and responsible consumption and production. And for humans, we are here to support good health and well-being. All this is stimulated by biosecurity. Biosecurity will reduce the environmental impact, will increase socioeconomic impact, will increase human well-being. And this could also be seen in a One Health perspective. Thank you for the attention.
So thank you so much for your insightful and thought-provoking presentation, Dr. Edgar Brun. It's really very interesting. Your presentation is highly related to today's problem of pandemic and cross-border infection. Maybe 2-3 years before we cannot talk. We don't know much about this cross-border infection, everything. But now it becomes. I mean, everyone knows about these cross-border infections, and people are well known about this. Biosecurity related to the human beings. Okay, so is there any question? I have. One question, just, Sankari, she asked from Malaysia, is there any vaccines for tilapia in Malaysia? Like that, she asked the question.
If you hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you.
That I'm not sure. I think we have to ask someone else. I'm not aware of those vaccines availability in Malaysia.
Okay. Yeah, so we got one answer from Anastasia. She's agreeing that there is a vaccine in Malaysia like that. Fine. So another question from Kevin. I'm curious, how would we reduce the cost of the vaccine so that we can increase the usage of vaccine for tilapia?
Yeah, again, I think it's a question of course, the production and the companies producing these vaccines. But I think in many ways that vaccines being such an important part of the total biosecurity, the industry needs to collaborate in order to see how this can be done. And I also think that authorities should be more involved in seeing how they can let's say, help facilitate better vaccines. Obviously, this is a question, but from my side, I can see that the interest of using vaccine, I think, needs to be raised, and then the companies producing might be more interested in doing it because everybody is here to earn money. But I think there is a bias in or not a good balance in this perspective. So I think the industry, the producing industry, needs to show their great interest in using vaccines, and then discuss this with the companies to see how we can do it. And also, of course, the delivery ways are a challenge in many. So it's not that easy, but I think we are not putting enough effort into that.
Thank you.
That
Thank you,
tool,
Dr. Edgar.
to call it. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Edgar. So I have one question, so in salmon farming, sea lice, they created a huge economic loss in Norway. Is it? So it was due to the major problem of biosecurity in 1970s or 1980s, right?
Well, for the in the late 80s in Norway, we had huge problems with the bacterial infection and some viral infections like ISA. And most of the biosecurity measures that still are working was implemented at that period. And we also had very efficient vaccines against the bacterial diseases. So that combination, I would almost say, has at least saved the industry at that time. And we are still vaccinating and trying to implement biosecurity measures in parallel. So this is keeping the industry floating. And I usually say that if we get a bacterial infection that is difficult to produce a vaccine against, we are actually in big trouble. So that is how fundamental a good vaccine could be for keeping a good production.
Okay, thank you. And just last question. So in Norway or European countries, 100% of the farmed salmon are vaccinated all over European countries or only in Norway?
It's on the global, and it's Norway, Chile, and Scotland that we see that the vaccine is. Of course, we have many diseases, but these most common diseases, the vaccine is almost 100%. Yes.
Okay. So there is no, sea lice infestation nowadays. In Norway.
Sea lice, we do not have a vaccine against sea lice. So that is why sea lice is a huge problem.
Still the huge problem is going on.
Yes, it is the major problem at least in the Norwegian production. It is one of the major problems.
And the rules in biosecurity differs, is it? Rules in biosecurity differs from country to country.
It varies, obviously, yes. And when I say what I have said, it's not always the same good picture, but we're working quite, and I think the authorities have been quite good in implementing regulation that is demanding proper biosecurity. And this has been, as I mentioned, for the European, the EU animal health law, that has actually becoming a criteria in the regulation that every company should have a approved by the authority biosecurity plan.
Okay, thank you.
So this is emphasized a lot, and I shouldn't say it started from the pandemic, because this also was sort of the aquatic animal plan has been worked on since 2016, but at least the pandemic has shown the necessity of having good biosecurity.
Yeah, thank you.
And as you mentioned,
yes,
as you mentioned, this is due to this sort of transboundary problems that these infectious diseases create. Yeah.
Yes. So one participant asked, is it safe to consume the fishes after vaccination, like that?
Yes.
Safe, right? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Edgar Brun. Really, we are very grateful to you. You have given a wonderful presentation, and really, on behalf of the 11th Symposium on Diseases in Asian Aquaculture Organizing Committee, I would like to thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me. Thank you very much.